Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Shadow Academy, Chapter 10. The next day, Jaina's joy at seeing her brother again was overshadowed by Timothy Kai's presence and the fact that they were being shepherded down the corridor by a pair of well-armed stormtroopers. When Jason broke away from his guards just long enough to give her a quick hug, she spoke her words in a whispered burst. "I've got a plan. I need your help." Rough, armored hands pulled the brother and sister apart. One of the armored-clad guards leveled his blaster pistol at the twins and motioned them to move on. Jaina smiled in amusement. Even with Timothy Kai present, Brockus still wasn't certain of their cooperation. The stormtroopers were here to ensure that they caused no trouble. A slight nod of Jason's head told Jaina that he understood her words. "Want to hear a joke?" he asked brightly, purposely changing the subject. "Sure," Jaina answered with feigned innocence. Jason cleared his throat. "How many stormtroopers does it take to change a glow panel?" Jaina cringed inwardly. Her brother certainly was brave, or perhaps foolhardy. Nevertheless, she took the bait. "I don't know. How many stormtroopers does it take to change a glow panel?" One of the guards stepped ahead of Jaina and stopped at the door to a lecture room, in which she could see dozens of people seated. She guessed they were probably the other Shadow Academy trainees. The guard with the blaster pistol gestured them to enter. "It takes 2 stormtroopers to change a glow panel," Jason said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "One stormtrooper to change it, and the other one to shoot him and take all the credit for his work." Jaina tried unsuccessfully to suppress a snort of laughter. Timothy Kai glared violet daggers at Jason. Jason squirmed under her angry regard and muttered, "I can tell you're from Dathomir. Your people aren't exactly known for their sense of humor." As her 2 guards took her arms in a bruising grip, Jaina was forced to admit that her brother's small act of bravado had released something inside her, and she had shown her that her mind, at least for now, was still free, and that she still had choices. She was dragged into the meeting room, where her guards shoved her into a sitting position at one end of the narrow, backless bench. Jason's guards seated him on the opposite side of the room, no doubt to punish him for this joke. Jaina was delighted to see that Loie sat less than a meter away from her, with only one student between them. He roared a greeting at her and Jason. The other students were all human, clean-cut, and wearing dark uniforms. They seemed eager to learn, glad to be at the Shadow Academy. Genuine imperial youth. She had seen people like this before. She and Jason and Loie might be the only ones resisting the training, she knew. Jaina frowned when she saw that EMTD was still not at Loie's belt. That would make communication difficult. She wondered what her Uncle Luke would do in such a situation. She sat up straight, cleared her mind, and sent a gentle thought probing in Loie's direction. She did not feel any pain from him. He was unarmed, of that she was certain. But she did sense tension, confusion, and simmering frustration. She tried to send him soothing thoughts. She wasn't sure how much got through, but when Loie briefly reached a furry hand toward her to touch her shoulder, she knew he understood. Jaina wondered if she dared speak openly to her Wookiee friend. She would have liked to find out what the student next to her was like first. He was about her age, a little taller. Like all the other willing students, he wore a tight, sleek-fitting charcoal jumpsuit with a flowing robe of purest black. He had blonde hair and moss-green eyes, and he glanced at her without any particular recognition or interest. She sent her thought probe toward the young man, but caught nothing beyond elusive snatches that blared fleetingly in her mind, like disconnected notes from an orchestra tuning its instruments. "Why are we here?" Jaina asked in a voice just above a whisper. "Because we are here," he replied, aloof and a bit defensive. Because Master Braxis wishes us to be here. He looked at her with suspicion, as if she had proved herself mentally deficient. Are we all here to learn the ways of the Force from Master Brachus, or are we not? Before Jaina could reply, Brachus himself strode into the chamber. The silence in the room was instant and complete. Not a cough or a syllable challenged his compelling presence. Brachus let his piercing eyes rove across the faces of the gathered students. When his eyes met hers, Jaina felt an inexplicable chill creep down her spine. Without preamble, he began to teach. The Force is an energy that surrounds all living things. It flows through us. It flows from us. As his voice streamed around the students, Jaina felt her mind begin to relax. This wasn't so bad after all. All of it was true. The power in Brachus' voice urged action, demanded agreement. Jaina saw the heads of many students nodding. She nodded too. Jaina could not remember the words as Brachus led them smoothly, logically, from one concept to another. All she remembered were the thoughts, the feelings, the rightness of it all.
Oh no.
Then suddenly, for some reason, perhaps it was the light touch of a furry hand on her back, the words came out into focus again, began to permeate the complacent fog of unquestioned agreement that had blanketed her mind. You each have the tools inside you to master yourselves and master the Force, the tranquil, confident voice said. And to draw on the strength of the Force, you must learn to draw on what is strongest in you. Strong emotions, deep desires, fear, aggression, hate, anger. A resounding no rang through Jaina's mind, and she shook her head to clear it. That can't be true, she whispered. It's not true. The student next to Jaina flicked his eyes at her with a look of disdain. Of course it's true, he said, as if using an indisputable logic. Master Brachus said it, so it must be true. What makes you so sure? Jaina hissed. Can't you see that he has a hold on your mind? You should get away from this place. Start thinking for yourself. I don't wish to leave, he said, his expression impalpable. I wish to study with Master Brachus and become a Jedi. Jaina seethed at his stubbornness. Have you even thought about this? You can't just blindly accept whatever he says without bothering to think about it. What if he's wrong? He is the teacher. The student's moss green eyes blinked at her, as if her question made no sense. He stood abruptly, begging Brachus' attention. Jaina took the opportunity to lean behind him and whisper to Loie, I've got a plan. In a couple of days, I'll need you to knock out all the station's power. Be ready. As she sat back up, her mind finally registered the fact that the stubborn blonde student was addressing Brachus. It is trying to convince other students that they should not believe you, and you should not have and you do not have true teachings of the Force, and therefore I suggest this girl is not a worthy pupil of you, Master Brachus. Brachus' beautiful, piercing eyes narrowed and came to rest on Jaina. She felt the press of his powerful mind against hers. She tried to resist. You are new here, he said. You do not know our ways. Listen to my teachings, then make your judgment. Decide for yourself, but do not discourage others to disbelieve me ever again. In unison, the students murmured their agreement, with 3 exceptions. At this academy, we do not learn only one side of the Force, Brachus went on, resuming his lecture, though his comments seemed directed primarily against Jason, Jaina, and Loie. This is not a school of darkness. I call this the Shadow Academy. For what does life create by its very nature, if not shadows? And it is only through using the full range of our emotions and desires, the light and the dark, that you will become truly strong in the Force and fulfill your destiny. The light side by itself only offers limited power, but when the light is blended with the dark, and you work within the shadows, then you will achieve your full potential. Use the strength of the dark side. Jaina looked across to Jason, who was slowly shaking his head. Close beside her, Loie growled deep in his throat. Unable to contain herself any longer, Jaina stood. "That is not right," she said. "The dark side doesn't make you any stronger. It's faster, easier, more seductive. It's also more tenacious. Just as the light side brings freedom, the dark side brings only bondage. Once you enslave yourself to the dark side of the Force, you may never escape." A collective gasp went up, but no one said a word as Jaina and Brackus faced each other over the students' heads. Brackus was silent for a long moment, his mind pressing down on hers with a suffocating weight. With a mental heave, Jaina flung aside the influence of his mind on hers and challenged him, her eyes filled with pride, her thoughts free. At last Brackus shook his head sadly. "I did not wish to make an example of you, but you leave me no choice. You have chosen to pit your puny light side powers against my own. I gave you one warning. You will not receive another." With that, Brackus lifted one hand slightly, almost as if to wave a fond farewell. Blue fire danced from his fingertips and surrounded Jaina in a haze of bright agony. Brackus's calm cruelty against Jaina launched Lobaka into an unbridled rage. Unable to control himself, he leapt from his cramped seat, knocking over the blond student. He howled at the top of his lungs and bared long Wookiee fangs. Ginger-colored fur struck out in all directions as he yanked on the bench he was sitting on and raised it over his head. Alerted by the disturbance, guards charged into the room, their stun pistols drawn, looking for the source of the chaos, and the raged Wookiee was not difficult to find. Loie threw the bench at the incoming stormtroopers. His blow knocked the first cluster of guards backward into each other, tumbling them down like children's blocks. 5 more stormtroopers tripped over their fallen companions, but still managed to wade into the room. The other Shadow Academy trainees added to the uproar, trying to shout Loie down. The Wookiee roared back at them. From the podium, Brackus urged everyone to be calm, but no one listened. Another door whisked open, and a new contingent of stormtroopers rushed in from the far side of the room. Jason dashed to his unconscious sister's side and cradled her head and shoulders in his lap. With relief, he sensed that she was not seriously injured from the force blast. She groaned and blinked her sandy, brandy brown eyes, trying to fight her way back into consciousness. "Jaina!" he called. "Jaina, snap out of it!" I'm all right. All right, I am," she said, struggling to sit up. Then she seemed suddenly to notice the brawl that Loie had started on her behalf. The second set of stormtroopers drew their stun pistols as Loie yanked the bench out from under another Shadow Academy student, sending her to the floor. The student squealed in outrage. Loie ignored her and raised the bench to throw at the incoming stormtroopers. They pointed their stun pistols and fired, but the beam caught the front of the bench, doing no damage. Loie tossed it, and the stormtroopers scrambled out of the way as the bench crashed against the side wall. Lobaka ducked to pick something else to throw, and just as he did, the first set of stormtroopers on their feet on the other side of the room, finally climbing back to their feet, fired their stun pistols. Glowing blue arcs shot all over Loie's back, missing him and striking full against the three of the second set of stormtroopers on the other side, stunning them. They sprawled senseless on the floor in a clattering tumble of white plasteel armor. "Cease this disturbance!" Brackus shouted. His normally smooth features lost their serene composure. 2 of the stormtroopers in the first group took 2 steps forward and aimed the pistol directly at Loie's back as the Wookiee stood up, presenting an easy target. Jason watched, and in the moment before the stormtrooper could fire, used his greatest strength with the Force to grasp the stormtrooper's blaster and wrench it halfway around, twisting it in the white-gloved hand so that when the guard pressed the firing button, the barrel was pointed toward his own chest. The stun beam splashed out, knocking the trooper on the ground unconscious. "Loie, I'm all right," Jaina called, picking herself up and climbing to her feet. "Look, I'm all right." More stormtroopers rushed in from both sides of the room, weapons drawn. "Loie, calm down," Jason said. Lobaka looked from side to side, fingers spread, arms ready to tear something apart until he saw he was clearly outnumbered. Brackus stood with his fingers outstretched. A shimmering power curled between them, ready to be unleashed. "We don't want to damage you," Brackus said, filled with savage intensity, "but you must learn discipline." The master of the Shadow Academy looked to the stormtroopers. "Return them to their quarters and keep them separated. We have great work to do here, and cannot be distracted by unchanneled displays of temper." Then Brackus, adjusting his handsome features until he looked calm and soothing again, he raised his eyebrows in admiration toward Loey. "I am pleased to see the strength in your anger, young Wookiee. That is something we must develop. You have great potential." The white armored guards crushed Loey's arms in their unfeeling grip. The stormtroopers marched the three young Jedi Knights out into the corridor and toward their cells.